The Air Force just did something with the B-21 they have never done before. Plus, the investigation into last year's $10 million F-22 and tanker midair reveals more problems for the KC-46. Oh, and Congress just blocked the Air Force's attempt to retire the U-2, and the latest insight on the B-52 crash at Edwards Air Force Base. I'm Thomas Mott, this is MachSquawk. So there's a ton of military aviation news on today's show, but there's none bigger than what the Air Force just did with the B-21 Raider, something they say has never been done before. Just 1 week ago, the Air Force officially announced that a B-21 Raider flew with both a developmental test pilot and an operational pilot for the first time, with the commander of the Air Force's Operational Test and Evaluation Center Detachment Number 5 saying, quote, "We put an operational test member in the pilot seat with an Air Force Test Pilot School graduate in the other. In the history of modern test, we've never done that so early in a program." And while on the surface, this doesn't seem like that big of a deal, the Air Force emphasized they've never done it before, and this is actually a massive accomplishment. Flying with both an operational tester and a developmental tester is the bridge between Phase 1 and Phase 2 of testing a brand new aircraft like the upcoming B-21 Raider. As Phase 1, or the developmental testing phase, is usually done by a specific developmental test pilot, it is made to ensure the aircraft not only flies safely, but meets technical specifications. Essentially, this developmental testing has been going on with the B-21 Raider ever since its first flight back in November of 2023. Operational testing, though, is completely different. As Defense Blog, for example, described it as, quote, "a fundamentally different evaluation, asking whether the aircraft is combat effective, survivable in contested airspace, and suitable for use by the actual warfighters who have flight in a conflict." Historically, these two phases have been conducted one after the other, with a significant gap between them. And so, the fact the Air Force just willingly compressed these two phases into one specific test flight shows the B-21 is potentially way ahead of schedule. The Raider is the Air Force's next-generation stealth bomber, designed to penetrate even the most advanced air defense systems, provide conventional and nuclear capabilities to replace the 19-airframe B-2 fleet, along with the aging B-1 Lancers and B-52 Stratofortresses. As it stands, the Air Force has listed a minimum inventory of about 100 B-21s, with an average procurement cost of almost $700 million, with the target date for the initial operational fielding sometime in 2027. As it stands, though, there are 2 test aircraft currently flying at Edwards, one of which made this historic aforementioned flight, with the other previous major milestone back in April of this year, when a KC-135 successfully mid-air refueled with a B-21 for the first time, which further proved that the current B-21 testing phase of the entire program is moving much faster than potentially any other stealth program in history. And so, with the Raider potentially coming online faster than expected, the Air Force already authorized congressional funding to increase the annual B-21 production capacity by up to 25%. And as the Defense Blog noted, quote, "When production rates increase, the cost of discovering and correcting a design or integration problem grows proportionally, because each fix must be retrofitted across a larger number of aircraft. Early operational testing that identifies crew interface problems, weapons deployment issues, or survivability gaps before production line accelerates is not just good practice, it's a financial and operational imperative." And so, as it stands, it sure sounds like Boeing and both the Air Force are way ahead on the overall B-21 program, and that historically, with many other airframes, has not usually been the case. Obviously, this is still a long way to go, but it is quite impressive this latest news that the B-21 is progressing faster than ever. Now, moving on from the successful B-21 program to the slightly less successful KC-46 Pegasus, as an accident investigation board just published the details behind the July 18th, 2025 midair between a Pegasus tanker and an F-22 Raptor, as the incident last year involved a KC-46 out of McConnell Air Force Base in Kansas and a Raptor from the 1st Fighter Wing at Joint Base Langley. And the details are pretty incredible here, as the Air and Space Forces noted, quote, "According to the report, the boom operator was a qualified instructor more than 1,000 flight hours in the KC-135 and KC-46 at the time of the accident. The F-22 pilot was a student with just 13 hours in the F-22 at the time of the mishap." But the details of this midair revealed that yes, there was some user error, but also the systemic problems of the KC-46's boom was at the center of the main problem. The article would add on, quote, "The refueling started badly. The F-22 approached the KC-46 3 times trying to make contact, and twice the boom operator called for emergency separations because the F-22 pilot couldn't hold the proper position. Once the 2 aircraft did connect, the boom operator had to repeatedly make many verbal corrections, 4 in less than 15 seconds, according to the report." Which, just on a side note, by the way, learning to tank in a single-seat fighter is arguably one of the hardest parts of basic courses, not just for the F-22, but all other Air Force planes. And that's really because tanking in, say, an F-22 simulator with an instructor pilot right behind you with no real-world consequences, that's difficult on itself. But when you actually go ahead and get into a cockpit of a single-seat fighter, there's nobody behind you to go ahead and help. Air and Space Forces would then continue, quote, as the operation continued, the F-22 kept pushing forward relative to the KC-46, approaching the inner telescope disconnect limit. When the KC-46's refueling system automatically disconnects to prevent the boom from being driven too far inward. Meanwhile, the boom operator's input also increased the load on the boom. When the boomer initiated a disconnect to retract the boom's telescope, he couldn't find the boom button. Next, the boom operator told the F-22 to break away from the KC-46, but failed to pull back on the boom. The boom eventually wrenched free as the F-22 pulled away, the force of the movement causing it to swing up and strike the KC-46's empennage, damaging the tail cone, auxiliary power unit exhaust, and the boom. With the result being the picture you see right here, and what is described in the report as a $10 million mishap. And of course, as just mentioned, the Air Force talked about in the investigation, boom error from the actual boom operator, but also problems with the F-22 pilot. But really, the main issue comes back to the stiff boom problem on the KC-46. The Air Force's newest tanker have been plagued with this so-called stiff boom ever since inception. As when the boom connects to a fighter's receptacle, excessive forces can cause the nozzle to become bonded or stuck, which obviously is what happened in this instance. Although the Air Force investigation determined, quote, the boom operator's control inputs were the primary cause of the mishap, along with the, quote, F-22 Raptor's actions as a substantially contributing factor, it sure seems like the military's newest tanker should really not be having these issues nonetheless. But thankfully, according to this brand new report last week by the Government Accountability Office, Boeing is currently flight testing an updated remote vision system to address deficiencies in the newest airborne tanker aircraft, with Boeing spending more than $8 billion in program cost overruns and recently stated that it has started flight testing the newer versions of the system. But because Boeing is just now still flight testing the newest updates, the newest upgrades, it could still take till 2028, according to a brand new report, for the Pegasus to officially be not a problem, flying in the skies and having no issues. Now, moving on to the very sad and latest update on the B-22 crash at Edwards. You guys all saw this, I'm sure. We did get some new details this morning that have come to light on potentially what happened. As a brand new report confirmed that this specific B-52 involved in a deadly crash was part of the Air Force's radar modernization program to replace the older mechanical radars inside the buff with a brand new active electronically scanned array, which is part of the service's work to outfit all existing B-52s with, quote, new engines, improved avionics, new digital cockpit displays, new weapons, better communication systems, and other changes. When the fleet is fully modified by the 2030s, the Stratofortresses will be redesignated as the B-52J. And now we have learned that the actual B-52 involved in this crash at Edwards was testing this brand new radar array. Hence why there was 8 crew members inside, all of whom lost their lives, instead of the usual 4 to 5 to 6. 2 of those crew members, confirmed by Boeing, were actual workers for the company. But people do tend to forget that this whole radar program has had difficulties in recent years, with Air and Space Forces noting, quote, technical integration challenges and cost growth that triggered a law in spring 2025 requiring congressional notification and delays that contributed to the B-52J's projected initial operation capability slipped 3 years. The radar program's troubles led to the Air Force to scale back its scope, a Pentagon report said back in March, which obviously is noteworthy, although we cannot officially say that the radar upgrade inside the B-52 was the reason the crash happened. It could have been the engines, mechanical failure, pilot error. We just don't officially know as of yet. But we did get newly released flight tracking that did show, quote, the bomber turning to the northeast right after taking off and nearly completing a 180-degree turn before crashing on another runway, according to the AirNav systems. Now, this data from the system does not officially show precise altitude and speed information, but it does show the plane fell at a rate of descent of 5,056 feet per minute, nearly 10 times as fast as a plane typically descends when preparing to land. Now, historically, this is the first loss of a B-52 in over a decade, as back in May of 2016, a Buff skidded off the runway during a takeoff in Guam due to a suspected bird strike. That entire crew did safely evacuate before the bomber caught fire and was a total loss. Before that, though, the most recent B-52 fatality actually happened back in 2008, when a Buff out of Guam crashed in the ocean upon takeoff, killing all 6 crew members and later being declared a malfunction in the B-52's rear stabilizer. As it stands, the actual investigation into exactly what happened with this B-52 could take up to 6 months, according to the Air Force. And so as for now, we will wait for more info, but it could take a long time to officially know what happened. Now, moving on, last but not least, and Congress just officially moved to block the retirement of the Air Force's U-2 spy plane fleet. As a draft fiscal 2027 defense spending bill released by the House Appropriations Committee would prevent the Air Force from retiring more than 2 U-2s during the budget cycle. The proposal also includes $81 million for program depot maintenance to restore 4 aircraft and increase the operational availability of the fleet. As it currently stands, only 23 of the Cold War-era Dragon Ladies remain operational, with the Air Force arguing that the aging spy planes are increasingly vulnerable in future conflicts and continues to be expensive and difficult to maintain. But of course, Congress actually pays the bills, and so they're arguing that the U-2 still has operational capability and is an important part of the overall Air Force's spy plane platform. And so for now, the U-2s are staying. How much longer, though, that remains to be seen. Now, of course, plenty more stuff happening here on MachSquawk. If you're brand new, I'm trying to give you guys the latest military aviation news, rumors, everything involved in a very short consumable video, hopefully under 15 minutes. And so if you like that, drop a like, be subscribed, leave a hype and a comment as well. Always helps the channel grow. I'm Thomas Mott, though. Stay tuned for the next one. This has been MachSquawk.